I don't think I've ever told you this before, but one of the first things I got into trouble for as a journalist involved me removing the word adopted from somebody else's copy in a news queue. I was very, very wet behind the ears when I did it. I was only on shifts. I didn't even have a job. And I was looking through the computer file, I suppose is the only way I could describe it to you, of all the stories waiting to go into the next day's newspaper. And I had the sufficient level of authority, because one of my stories was going into the next day's newspaper, to make some sort of amendments. And there was a story about, I think it was an aristocrat's son who'd been caught drink driving. And every mention was adopted, the adopted son of the Earl of Buffington, the adopted son of the... And I did not, and I still to this day do not, understand what that word was doing in that story. I think I took it quite personally, oddly. I felt that the fact that the lad was adopted was somehow being held up as a reason or a cause for his criminality. I don't think that it was a pie in the sky paranoia. That I think that we've all lived or dealt with stigma. You know that there's a lot of misunderstanding, a lot of confusion about adoption out there, and I felt it was really insensitive and unhelpful to have the adoption status, the adopted status of the child, produced in the context of his criminality. Why on earth am I mentioning that to you today as I prepare to return your attention to the horrible story of Elianne Andam, who was, of course, fatally stabbed in Croydon in September of 2023. Her murderer found guilty yesterday in South London. The murder was in South London. Why am I thinking about my youthful indiscretions with regards to the word adoption in the context of criminality when I refresh my memory of the details of Elianne's murder? And the reason is that the murderer denied murder and claimed that his autism spectrum disorder had caused him to lose control. Now, I don't know whether the autism of a criminal should ever be considered in a court case. I genuinely don't know. And that is going to be the question that I ask you shortly. So if you think you can answer it, then get in there now. Michael wants to know what age that production is for. Well, from 2 to 92, but with an 11-year-old and a 14-year-old, Michael, ballet shoes at the National Theatre would be right up their street, I can promise you. And there you go. That answers Laura's question as well, who wanted me to repeat the name of the production. I don't know. I got introduced to a new word just before Christmas. It's a word that I'm not sure I'm going to use again, but I'm going to use it now. And the word I was introduced to was neurospicy. And it was somebody describing themselves as having neurodiversity in a variety of different ways. So, there's ADHD, there's ADD, there's oppositional defiance disorder. And then there is autism spectrum disorder. And very hard, I think, with some people to separate them out and to know what role a disorder may have played in a certain behaviour. But if a child plays out in class, if you know, for example, that a child with autism spectrum disorder is going to have behavioural problems in class, then the argument for using it as an explanation or an excuse in the context of more serious behaviour, more criminal behaviour, becomes relatively clear. But that's when I lead you back to my theory on adoption, where I honestly don't believe that being adopted has any bearing whatsoever on criminality or criminal behaviour. So there'll be a lot of people listening to this programme who are, what's the word I'm looking for, a lot more familiar with autism spectrum disorder than I am. I wonder whether I've just rung a little bell in your brain, whether you feel what I feel about that word adopted being in news coverage of crimes. I wonder if you feel the same about the way in which the word autism often appears in the news. Autism often held up as an undiluted negative, something that is an explanation of criminality, is an explanation of violence, dysregulated behaviour. Because I don't know. 13 minutes after 10 is the time. I don't know how reasonable it is. Should it be there? The court found that it did not constitute grounds for a plea, a not guilty murder plea. It was a majority verdict that the jury delivered, but the defence was that his autism and or his troubled background provided an excuse for the murder. And without necessarily revisiting the gory the horrible details, because I don't think it would be of service to Elianne's family or to her memory to revisit the grim details of this very specific crime, is it a very uncomfortable truth that there are links between autism and some bad behaviours? Do you understand why I'm asking you this? You see this story if you're autistic and you have an autistic child and you think, why the hell are they mentioning the autism in the context of this murder? I'm autistic. I'm never going to murder. It's just this weird difference between correlation and causation. So tell me, is it a word? Is it a condition that should appear in court cases? 0345 6060 973. It's a theoretical conversation. You can't stop somebody from offering this up as their defence, but I want to know how you feel about it. Should it be there? Should it be in these stories? 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. You may work in this field. You may be in this field. You may have children in this field. How much of a child's misbehaviour can be attributed to neurodiversity or autism? And if we accept that much of it can, then why wouldn't it be a reasonable defence in a murder case? I don't know what the corollary is here. You know, this murderer has autism. If the same human being did not have autism, would that human being have committed murder? That's all I want to know. Does it have a space in a criminal defence? Does it have a place in a criminal defence? And how does it make you feel?